Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this inaugural JHU Grad Camp 2021. Actually, this is the last event for the day, for this first day of the bootcamps, in which we are going to be talking about how you can take control of your professional development during grad school. My name is Gian Molina Castro. I'm currently a PhD candidate in the neuroscience department at Hopkins, and I'm delighted to be the moderator for this session today. First, I want to thank the Life Design Lab for organizing this amazing event, and of course to our panelists today for accepting this invitation. So we have with us today Dr. Kate Bradford. She's the Director of the Professional Development and Career Office, or as we know it, BDCO, at the School of Medicine. We have Dr. Zane Forshee, Chair of Professional Studies at the Peabody Institute and Director of the Peabody LAUNCHPad, and Dr. Roshni, Director of the PHutures office, which serves both doctoral students and postdoctoral offices, mainly at the Homewood campus. And although we have a set of questions ready to launch and basically promote the discussion around this topic, please feel free to write any question you may have during the event on the discussion board, basically the chat, as part of the Brazen platform. You can find it on the right on your screen. And I will be then incorporating those questions as we go along. So to start this conversation today for the panel, I would love to start very general in the topic of professional development and to get your input about what is considered professional development. So I will start with you, Kate. We talk about taking ownership, of professional development, but what does that really entails?
Yeah, so professional development, I think, will evolve during your time in graduate school as far as what it means to you, because it evolves as you discover what you want out of what's next out of your after graduate school. So, I think early on in graduate school, professional development can look a lot like what's required of you, because early on in graduate school, often, it's overwhelming process. You have new classes, new classmates, new colleagues, new professors. So in the beginning of grad school, I think professional development just looks like your requirements. And then as you go on through grad school and you start exploring your campus and your community, professional development can really start to evolve and you can start to take ownership of it. So it can look like student group involvement, student group leadership, experiential learning, which means like internships or, part-time jobs can be professional development. But really, I think professional development can be any sort of opportunity that gets you learning something new that you can take on throughout your career. So this can be, the typical professional development like grant writing, or it can be something like learning how to be a leader or learning how to communicate through participating in competition. So I think you can really think very broadly about professional development, and it doesn't have to take place within the university. You can be involved in community organizations, and that is absolutely considered professional development as well.
Yeah, amazing, great point there. As we tend to focus only in our schoolwork, and get involved in activities inside our own university, we often forget that there is a world outside our academic arena. So yeah, I love that advice. Roshni, let's continue with you. What can we consider professional and career development?
Yeah, thank you. I think Kate summarized that so beautifully. I'd add to that. I'd say professional development is akin to investing in yourself. So I think that like we go to the gym to get better, then we study to get good grades. I think professional development is just another part of self-investment where we make sure that we're ready for any opportunity that might come while in grad school, but also beyond grad school. And as Kate mentioned, that opportunity can come in many different ways. It doesn't always look the same for everybody. For one person, it might look like getting involved in student organizations. And then for someone else, it might be just having conversations outside of our bubbles of academic structure that we're used to and that is expected of us, as Kate had mentioned. So I think it can look a little bit different to everyone. For me, it really looked like getting involved in leadership during being a grad student. So I was really active in a lot of student organizations, which helped with learning how to be a professional. And that might be, something as simple as learning to send an email, an effective way to send an email. And some other ways was organizing events such as this, that helped build my confidence a little bit as well. So I think for me, when it came time to apply for a job, that investment into professional development really paid off as well.
Awesome. Zane, I will go with you now. Can you guide us through that thinking process about what can entail professional development and how it may evolve, coming from an undergraduate degree towards a graduate degree?
Sure. Well, my colleagues have framed this so beautifully. So some of this may be a repeat, but from my perspective, one of the things I'm looking at, and I talk to students about, especially those that are finishing an undergraduate degree in an arts-based format, is you're looking for things that create opportunity for you to move forward outside of the institution. So that can look a lot of different ways, because in the work that most artists do, it is a network-based structure. And so while you are applying for opportunities, it's also about who you know. And so who you know can be who you know at the institution, who has connections to folks outside of the institution to create performance opportunities, or opportunities where you are able to intern for someone, or shadow someone in a space, or gain an experience like getting invited to go to a rehearsal, being all these different kinds of ways of where you're seeing connections through people you have both at your school, in your colleagues that you're taking classes with, and then people you're meeting in the community. So one of the things I'm always encouraging students as soon as they get into a program is meet as many people as you can, start building relationships as quickly as possible, and then start asking questions. Another piece I really encourage is that professional development, from my perspective, also can be getting exposed to ideas, and some of those ideas can be held simply in books. And so talking to professors, talking to mentors about what I can read, what would you recommend that I read, what's 2 good books that you think would be important for me to check out, and then start, even if it feels like it's outside of what you do, those are the ones I would actually encourage you to grow and investigate, because they're going to offer an opportunity for you to think differently.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to continue our conversation with the when to start. I know Kate alluded that earlier. So Roshni, I would like to start this line of conversation with you. When do you think a student will need or should start, this professional development journey during their career?
Yeah, something that I wish I'd known as a grad student, as an early sort of career student, is start as soon as you can. Like from the day you enter, the most important, when we talk about relationship building and networking, it's often that those relationships pay dividends many years down the road. It's always not about instant gratification. So when you're building your relationships, you start building them in year 1. By the time you're in year 5 and you're ready to graduate, that's when those relationships will start to pay off. So I'd say start as early as possible. But while I'm saying that, I understand that academics become a priority. It's definitely a priority. And I understand how you can be consumed with like lab work or thesis work or dissertation work. As you were going into grad school, same thing with the master's program. It's short. And in that period, I know that there's a lot of coursework and exams that one has to go through. Keeping that in mind, and we'll be talking about this later, but it doesn't have to be a overwhelming process. These are small baby steps along the way that you can take that sort of add up in an incremental way towards the end. So I'd say start as early as you possibly can. Most importantly, show up to things like this early on and absorb and listen and ask questions. And through that information osmosis, you'll start to get a clearer idea of what you might want to do in the future as well. So early is better, if you ask me.
Awesome. So I want to continue asking Zane more about what we can do, especially for people with humanities or social sciences background that are considering starting or will be starting master's and PhD studies. How can they get started in their professional development as part of their academic journey?
That's a great question, and it's a really big one. So one of the things I kind of want to underscore from my perspective is that anyone starting a career in any field that you just outlined, and that's a very broad area. Oftentimes there's no set career path. So it's really about forging and being comfortable, like thinking about where you want to go and where you want to explore, and thinking about, one of the things I like to do with people when I'm talking to them about what they're trying to do as soon as they come into the school is, what are you interested in exploring? What do you want to learn more about? I want to get some idea of where they're going. And this is one of the things I oftentimes do. And then I start working backwards. Okay, if I want to be over here and I have no point of connection to that, how do I get there? How do I figure this out? So that's a great opportunity for me to start working backwards, because it can seem like it's so far away, or you don't always see a direct connection, when actually, if you start with where you'd like to go or where you'd like to explore, you can work backwards in steps. And then as you start to move forward through that path, if you need to course correct, you're like, oh wait, I'm 3 steps into this now and it doesn't feel right, you can pivot. It gives you options. I think the most important thing, I want to jump back to the question that was asked a moment ago, but also it ties to this, is to be flexible in my thinking about where I'm going to go and what my career is going to look like. And I invite everyone who's starting a new degree or finishing a degree and taking the next steps, whether that's outside working or if it's continuing their education, to be thoughtful and open to the idea that your path may change and that that's completely okay.
Amazing. Kate, I would love to hear your thoughts about that, how we can go about finding, our passions, and how we can continue narrowing it down, like what we want to do for professional development. And I know it's hard firsthand to prioritize what to get involved and what to prioritize when it comes to professional development. So I would love to hear your advices.
Yeah, absolutely. And starting grad school is so overwhelming, because you have that first couple weeks of orientation where it feels like you're being blasted with a fire hose of all these student groups you can be involved in, all of these offices you need to engage with, and you're just trying to figure out, how to navigate campus and where to go eat lunch. So it can be so overwhelming. So I think give yourself a grace period to get used to grad school, understand your curriculum requirements, and then start to kind of piece in different pieces of professional development. Some may be, perfectly fine with jumping into something totally new. For me, I was not as involved in undergrad, so the idea of jumping right into the graduate student organization seemed very scary. But what I did was I started as just my department rep. And that got me started with just understanding, meeting people outside of my department. And then once I did that for a couple of years, then I jumped into, a higher leadership role. And that for me was an easier, more comfortable route. I think I also started with something comfortable by being on the alumni committee for my undergraduate sorority. So that was, again, an organization I was comfortable with, but it got me a chance to, try my hand out at leadership with a subject I already knew. So I think just looking for points of connections to your past, maybe. And, that is not only a way for you to grow professionally, but also to grow your community, your network. Is also so important as you're navigating grad school. In terms of looking for different courses, or maybe you want to learn data science, take this boot camp, learn policy. I think just being aware of what's out there is difficult. You get a lot of emails. Set aside some time to read those emails. That's going to get you aware of what's going on out there. I know we send a bunch of emails with everything that's happening, and it's easy after a few weeks to just stop reading them. But that's really where you're going to find the most concrete advice and be able to kind of plan the rest of your professional development through grad school.
Yeah, I really agree. I know firsthand the emails part. Now that I'm getting more involved also on leadership, I am part of that email blast. But yeah, personally, also for me has been talking with people. People will let you know what is happening around, where they are going, cool activities are on campus, so that also can help. Thank you for sharing also your story about how you got involved during your career. I would love to hear Roshni's and Zane's path, in in getting involved in professional development. So Roshni, if you want to start guiding us through what your experiences has been like.
Sure. I didn't know that there was anything called career services or careers or this job that I have now up until 4 years ago. I didn't even know it existed. I I was a postdoc and I did my PhD in immunology, and then I did my postdoc in immunology, and Kate was at the same place as well, the Food and Drug Administration. And it came a point where I had a baby and there was, life happened. And at that point, I had to reassess like what my future might hold. And up until that point, I was one of those people who was solely focused on my research work and, really quite oblivious to what might be the next steps. And then in that moment where I had to make that decision and I had this catalyst of family and life, I started exploring different career paths. And I spoke to a lot of people. I started from zero. I knew there was academic research and there was industry research for what I did, but beyond that, I was quite clueless. So I started from scratch systematically, actually. I started with opening a LinkedIn profile, a LinkedIn page, and then hunting for people who had similar backgrounds as I did and reaching out to them and just asking if I could talk to them about their careers. I felt like some of them were just a few steps ahead of me. They did it. They might have the knowledge and the wisdom to help me navigate how to get to where they are. And so along the way, I had plenty of conversations, some of which included shadowing people at their job, asking them about what they did. And the best thing that came out of those conversations is I realized professions and career paths that I didn't want to do. I didn't like the conversations I was having. Not that the people who I was talking to were not passionate about their jobs. It's just that I couldn't resonate with anything that they were saying, and it didn't feel like a right career path. Finally, at the end of the day, I landed on two options that felt right for me, and I'd like to emphasize that point. Like, it might not be right for everybody. It's like what resonates with your values and your motivations. And I ended up on consulting, and I came across a job description similar to like professional development and career development. And there were those two choices, and I had two job offers after applying, from one consulting and one from this role. And at that moment in time, this goes back to what Zane was saying about pivoting and being open, being flexible. At that moment of time where I was with my mindset, I decided to pursue the career development part because I had just spent a year and a half struggling with career development, and I thought I might be of use to other postdocs and PhDs that were thinking of moving as well. I said, I just had this crash course on how to apply, reject, interview. I might be able to contribute that way. So in that moment of time, I decided to choose this path of being in career services, telling myself that consulting is not off the table. Consulting for something else in the future is still not off the table. What my future direction looks like is sort of the multiple options. It could be anything. And so I've going forward, even though I run a career office, I couldn't tell you what my next steps would be. And that's okay. I think that's exactly what Zane was saying, is you just want to be open. You want to observe what is it that you're enjoying along the way? What is it that drains your energy? And as you keep doing that, things start to pop up, and keeping your eyes and ears open and relationship building with others will start yielding some sort of opportunities you never even imagined. And that's where I'm at. It's just having those relationships that I started 4 years ago are now coming into fruition, where people will offer a job or let me know about an opportunity. This is like 4 or 5 years of relationship building, leading to who knows where next. So that's a little bit about my story.
Thank you so much for sharing. I would like to remind everyone that you can post your questions in the discussion board on the right part of your screen. So feel free to do so, and I will be incorporating your questions as we go along and continue this panel today. So Zane, how has been your professional development journey? How has it changed, as you progress towards your career?
Well, I must report it's been a completely linear process. No changes at all. I woke at 7 as a 7-year-old. No, I'm kidding. The quite honestly, everything about my career has been a constant pivot. And when I began my studies, I'm a musician. That's probably apparent. But the goal originally for me was to be performing exclusively and teaching private lessons, and I've done that for years and years and years. And as I was doing that, I started. It's not that it wasn't engaging to me, but I had an opportunity. Someone approached me a few years ago and asked me if I would be willing to teach a course called The Business of Music. And so that course was all about how to stand up a career as an artist. And it's sort of the stuff that nobody told you how to do about building a career as an artist. And when I was first approached about it, I thought, I just, I have no business doing this. And then I took a step back and I thought, well, yeah, I guess I can, because I am doing this. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And so I built a course, and it was I taught a whole wide range of students. So I was teaching more people, and they were from all kinds of different artistic backgrounds. And the fundamental pieces of it are the same regardless of what an artist chooses, but there are certain pieces of the puzzle that they have to kind of work out. And I had more fun doing that and I was just so energized by the discussions and the questions and just the approach of it. And so an opportunity arose where they said, this position's open. What do you think? And I said, oh, it looks like a neat job. And they said, why don't you think about applying for it? And as to Roshni's point, it was about being open. And I thought, well, I never saw myself like this, but I'm seeing myself one way, and I know what that looks like. Like if I keep going, more or less, like what that view looks like. This is a totally different, like, wild card adventure. And I know that there are going to be some things I understand, and there's going to be a lot of things I don't understand, and I'm going to have to skill up at. But that's been my path the whole time. So do I want to go for door number one, which is what I know, or do I want to go for door number two, which is a lot of question marks? And for my personality, that's always the more attractive option. I'd rather be kind of uncomfortable and trying to figure things out, and also just being really open and saying, like, I'm new, I don't know everything. Please teach me, show me, correct me. And I think that's the other part of it, is that for my career path, and it's also the way I was trained, like your work is never done. So it's not like you learn the piece, you play the piece in the concert, and everybody's like, that was it, that was the moment. It's always evolving, and it's and changing, and you're getting new insights. That's a big piece of what I also would say is a part to my career path, is being open, willing to fail, and then also just being open for feedback.
Amazing, great stories. So, Kate, I would like to continue with you in this career awareness, career exploration phases that we mentioned. We quickly touch base that you're going to be continuing narrowing down the activities that you're going to do for professional development based on what career paths, what life paths you may want to do. And I know PDCO has this like 5+ year model of career and professional development. So basically starting with career awareness, then moving to career exploration, and finally gaining that experience and engaging in more experiential learning. So can you talk a little bit more about this approach, when you look at the full scale of graduate school, and guiding us through that career stages, especially career awareness, that will be the first step our attendees will be engaging in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you brought this up, because I think this is an aspect of careers that I never learned when I was an undergrad. I never learned it in graduate school. I didn't learn it in my postdoc. I didn't learn it until I was in this job. And just like Roshni said, I didn't know this career field existed, and like teaching people about their career, specifically graduate students, because as a graduate student, it didn't exist. It didn't exist as an office during my time. And that's why what brought me to this career is I advocated a lot as a graduate student in different organizations. I was like, hey, I think we should learn about networking. I think we should learn about resumes. And then I did that in my postdoc too. And then once I saw this job, I was like, wait a second, everything that I volunteered to do and I enjoyed doing, now I can get paid to do that. So in a lot of the ways, again, like Zane said, my career was not straightforward, but looking back, it makes sense. But yeah, so the idea of like career, I guess, theory, you can kind of think of it as a circle. It's a constantly evolving circle. And this isn't just during graduate school, this is throughout your life. So it starts with awareness. And this is not just being aware of what career possibilities are out there, but also self-awareness. And as you go through graduate school and as you go through your career, you are going to change as a person, which means your career, your ideas, your goals will also change. So what we mean by self-awareness, you can either, there's a lot of assessments. So for those of you who like to do an assessment that spits out answers for you, you have that option of doing, personality tests or career assessment tests. Really you can kind of pick your favorite flavor of those. And that's just a way for you to understand how you like to work, what types of projects you like to work in, what environments you like to work in, what types of people. Sometimes I like to challenge students and ask, how close do you want to be to the people you impact? So in science, you can have a lot of ways to impact people. Some people, like medical practitioners, you are face to face with the person you impact. But if you're a basic scientist who's studying yeast, like I was in graduate school, I was years, if not decades away from eventually maybe creating something that eventually lead in to help the health of a patient. So I was very, very far away. And so I think if you're considering the impact you want to have, you also want to consider how close you want to be to whoever or whatever you're impacting. So that's kind of the idea of awareness, aware of how you work, what you want to do in the world, and that can change. And then also being aware of what's out there, what options you have. So you can look at, for research, you can research this everywhere. You can talk to people, look for outcomes, look for stories, look on LinkedIn, look at who's coming to talk to your department. So that's kind of the awareness aspect. And then we go into more of the understanding experiential steps. So this is where, okay, you've maybe defined a couple different fields you may be interested in. So now you're going to learn more. So you're going to talk to people in that field. You're going to go to panels. You're going to learn what activities are involved, what skills are required. And then once you know what skills are required to get those jobs, you need to go get those skills or develop them during your graduate career. So again, this is where you're really going to be focused and strategic with what professional development you're doing. You're going to say, okay, I need to learn this type of code. Get a project with that type of code. Maybe you need mentoring experience. Get a summer undergrad in your lab. Maybe you need teaching experience. Apply for a Dean's Teaching Fellowship. So that's when you can be more strategic with your professional development, is when you've identified the career that you want to be, successful in. And so then the final aspect of the circle is just, successful application to whatever career you're applying to. So that's the resume, the interview, the negotiation. And then you get a job, and then it starts again, because once you get in a job, you start to realize what you like, what you don't like. You can hopefully change your career a little bit, maybe as you're in the position, but then eventually you'll probably move on to something else. So yeah, that's the cycle.
Awesome. I would like to hear a little bit more from Roshni about how to integrate these principles of life design and trying to account your own personality and goals and your current set. It can be your mindset, it can be your family responsibilities. How can you integrate that into your career awareness and starting to think about what are the next steps once in grad school?
Yeah, that's again a huge question, which can be broken down into, I guess, a combination of what we're all saying a little bit. But basically, today's event is hosted by the Life Design Lab, which is founded on a couple of principles, and those principles have been taken from how designers design products, right? And so it's really a few steps, to begin with, sort of empathizing with where you are, which, as Kate was mentioning, really self-reflecting, figuring out what is it you like, what gives you energy, what drains you, what do you enjoy on a day-to-day basis, not in a big scheme. You wouldn't know what it's like yet to be a scientist in Moderna. It's just, you just don't know that yet. But on a day-to-day scheme, what do you enjoy doing? Maybe it's solving problems, maybe it's talking to people. So principles of life design are simply based on that. It's go ahead, try stuff, talk to people, be curious. These are sort of elements like that. So when you're doing that sort of exercise of applying these life design principles of empathizing with where you are, talking to people, etc., what you're essentially doing is what Kate mentioned, which is self-reflecting a lot, really sitting down with yourself, which is what it boiled down to for me as well. What is it that you want to do? And for me, I ended up not really, like I said, it wasn't like I ended up deciding consulting or anything else. It was, I want to work with people. I want to help others. It gives me fulfillment to help others. I want to be authentic doing that. So what kind of a job might help me be completely myself, and that would be okay. I liked communicating, so I like teaching, but I didn't want to be an academic professor. So what job would allow me to continue to teach or educate, and that sort of landed on where I'm today as well. I educate. I can now consider myself an educator, but when I started this journey, I didn't think of it that way. So I liked those things, and so I wanted freedom. I wanted creativity in my job. I wanted to be able to take off in case my child got sick. So those are some of my I needed flexibility to be able to do that, while also feeling like I'm making an impact. So given all those categories, this seemed like a better fit at that moment for my values, for my motivations, for what gave me energy. Whereas I was comparing it to where I was before, and that was the opposite feeling. I didn't want to wake up every day and not want to think about what I would have to do the rest of the day. If I had at that moment thought of doing one more same sort of cell-based assay another day, it didn't feel hopeful for me. So what is it that gives you joy, brings you joy in your life, and what is it that you envision? What the PhD or graduate school does is provide that sort of validity to, and the degree helps. Obviously, when you go to graduate school, you can leverage what you learned along the way. For example, I still utilize all the things I did in my PhD, only I use it differently. I still focus on data, but it's not scientific data. I still problem solve. I still help others in a more impactful way, as Kate was saying, something that I can see the results immediately rather than maybe 5 years from now. And that was important to me. So I don't feel like my identity as a scientist in that process has been lost. I just see that my training or my graduate school has helped me employ it in a different way. And that's what that does. That's what graduate school, whether it's a master's, an MD, MPH, PhD program does, is provide that credibility and that validity to what we're doing, and be able to help us hone our skill sets that we can then transfer. And you'll hear this term a lot from our offices, is this transferable skills. Transfer those skills to a variety of different career paths. Now, where I sit, having run an office for a year and a half, many different spokes of careers have now opened up. It could be marketing, it could be public relations, it could be advertising. And I wouldn't, I'm a scientist. What would I be doing in advertising? But I could, because I've built an office that required those skills, and I've learned a couple of things along the way. So that's how, assessing first who you are and what motivates you is a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Zane, how has been your approach in LAUNCHPad and mentoring and guiding students from the Peabody Institute through this exploration and awareness process?
Again, another really big question. So I'll do my best to answer it in a couple as succinctly as possible. So one of the best ways I find for our population of students, and it was actually one of the things that attracted me to the job was that I'm in now as a director, is that they wanted a working artist to be in this role. And so that was one of the things that, again, allowed me to keep a part of what I knew is door number one of I still very much value making art. I still very much, that's one of the forces that really drives me in helping students. The part that's valuable about that for our office is that it's a way of kind of showing students one possibility, and that they can kind of living by example in a sense. That's the first piece of it. The second part of it is really giving students access to as much information around different types of artists and different ways and pathways that we've seen. Because the thing that I've noticed now, as I've been in this role for a couple of years, is that, and it makes perfect sense from the way we're trained, and I think this transfers over to any field, is that if you become focused and specialized in a particular area, there becomes, in a sense, like a required, not a required, but more of a typical pattern or pathway that you see folks go on an academic track. And in fact, I think the artists that have the most and people that have the most successful and rewarding careers are the ones that look at that, are very much reflective around, does this align with what I'm doing? Or do I need to make this look unique to me in these particular ways? And then really feeling supported and guided as they make those choices, because that's the other part of this, very much in the culture of where I'm from and the way I was trained, is you are trained in how to sound. This is the way we sound. This is the way we interpret this. This is how we do this. And then all of a sudden, you're supposed to build a career and no one's guiding you. So it's, in a sense, conform, now go do your own thing. And that can be so jarring, to where as soon as I have a chance to interact with students, the first question is, for me, is, what does this look like for you? Like, how? And then usually there's this kind of moment where they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? I'm gonna go do this. And I'm like, okay, well, look, what else? Like, what else is there? What are you also thinking about? So that there's this real conversation around that. And we've built a culture in our office where most everyone in our office is an artist in some way, shape, or form. And then also our students are artists that are in training at the time. We have a lot of student workers. And so there's this culture of everyone is kind of in flux, and there are a lot of opportunities to have conversations around what that feels like. The other part that I think is just critical, and I work on this with myself, and I know lots of artists that I speak with feel this way, is that they are having to really kind of put the blinders on to what everyone else around them is doing, so that they can focus on their path and understand that just because their path is different doesn't mean it's wrong, or it doesn't mean that it's better. It is that it is individual. And that really comes into that point around the design thinking approach to this, where like there's only one right, which is forward, and you're forward, versus a narrow kind of, this is how we all have to do this.
Amazing, thank you. And before we talk about your own experiences, and I really appreciated that. So I would like to continue highlighting some stories from the students, and so the students can find these relatable paths, you know, and trying to move away a little bit from the theory and just checklists that they may receive from the department or the program, you know. I would love to hear some really successful stories from the students that you have worked in the past. So, Kate, I would like to start with you. Can you share a success story from someone from SOM, School of Medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share a story about a student who started grad school with no idea what she wanted to do. So she was involved in, as Gian described, we have a particular program called the Options Career Curriculum. And so what this is it builds on that awareness experience cycle, like I explained last time I was talking. So this particular student attended a bunch of panels their first 2 years just to try to understand what careers were out there and trying to see which ones kind of sounded really interesting. So then in her third year, she chose to attend the career community that was about biotech and pharma. So in this career community, there are like 6 or 7 different workshops with different professionals where you not only hear about a particular career within the biotech and pharma, but you also get to do an activity that's indicative of that particular career. So after that, she went ahead and participated in one of our mentoring programs. So this is a program that we started with a particular society called CAS. It's also now run by the Hopkins Biotech Network. So this program still exists, and this exists to pair students with biotech professionals. And these are not just alumni, these are people from all over the world in various different professions that students can connect with to ask questions, learn about different careers. She also then completed an internship with our office, and PhD internships are not common. They are a new phenomenon. So if that is an opportunity that you would be interested in, make sure that this exists at whatever institution you're going to. And if it doesn't exist, start talking to people to see if other people have started to do internships, because it's a bit of a difficult thing to navigate within a PhD program. It's not impossible, but in some places it's not easy. So definitely keep a lookout for programs that support internships. Anyway, she did an internship at a local biotech company. This padded her resume with the actual industry experience that looked really attractive to the different jobs she was applying to. She was also able to use her mentor connection from the mentor program in order to get connected to a position at a different biotech company, which then she worked with our office to prepare her documents and did a mock interview. We helped her with a negotiation, and yeah, so now she is working in biotech.
Awesome. Zane, I would love to hear a story from a musician.
Sure. So I will be honest with you and say that this was a challenging year to enter into the world as a performing artist. And so, again, a lot of conversations were had around how do you approach this? Because, for instance, the possibility of not gathering is a very real thing. So the student that I was having these conversations with is a cellist and was interested in an orchestral career, but also interested in academic work at the same time, and was kind of drawn between these two worlds. And as we had conversations around how you're going to navigate these challenges, because orchestras are not performing right now. In fact, most of the time they're not even holding auditions because there's no ability to get that many people together. And then they had elected to not apply to graduate schools to continue their education. We started having conversations around, well, what are the things that are of interest to you? How do you want to explore this? How do we play this? And what we found was we wanted to work in the arts. We wanted to still have some thought that required, and they started to realize they liked project management. They liked oversight of things. And so she's currently working for a really successful concert series that is done in virtual things this past season, based in New York, and she's now as the kind of the operations director for that organization. She's still getting to work in the arts community. She's actually going to have a chance to perform in different capacities, and she's still able to kind of have that administrative experience in a field that she's directly involved in. But when she graduated in May, this was something she wasn't thinking about at all.
Wow, inspiring. Roshni, I know a portion of the population that PHutures serve is pursuing graduate degrees in humanities and social sciences. So can you share a story of someone from this background for the benefit of those in the audience with similar backgrounds?
Sure. As Zane mentioned, this was a hard year as humanities, academic job markets weren't really existing anymore. And so I had a student, I started about a year and a half ago, and in that first couple of months that I had started, I had a student who attended a workshop that I gave on LinkedIn and networking. And, I didn't think, I gave the workshop, I didn't know my students at that point, but that particular student has been a pastor at a church and studies, their thesis is to do with the Bible and everything, but they wanted to transition into a consulting role. And so they wrote to me on LinkedIn and over email saying, I don't know where to start, et cetera, et cetera. And so we started with, what we had, which was a resume that reflected a lot of academic work on there and was full of academic work. And it was hard for the student in the beginning to make the connection of how their humanities academic work had led to, could lead or to skills that would be desirable in consulting. And so in casual conversation, they mentioned that I speak 10 archaic languages. And I was like, you speak 10 archaic languages? 10 languages is what I focused on. And they're like, yeah, but it's archaic. I said, you speak 10 languages, that's something to sort of highlight there. So a lot of what the student was doing was sort of downplaying their work and hadn't realized how to make the connections from their academic time spent during their PhD to what is desirable in the workplace. So when we started dissecting out all the things that were transferable, there was plenty to go on. So having sort of worked through that, the next step was they started utilizing LinkedIn. They did not have a LinkedIn account before this. They started using LinkedIn. They started talking to people who were humanists in consulting. One thing led to the other, and a year later, after many rejections, and this is part of the career journey, is rejections, not hearing back. After many rejections, the email came last week saying, I am starting a role at this boutique consulting firm. Having not had a LinkedIn profile, to using LinkedIn, to networking with people, and someone who they chatted with on LinkedIn referred them to a position. And that's how they sort of got through that whole journey. And the best part is they said, how may I help my other fellow humanists use me as a resource in the future? And I think that's, again, that whole, you give back. Maybe now is the time to ask for help. Maybe now is our time to go to a career office, to talk to people, but eventually down the line, we can give back. We can also help other people. And that's part of that like mentoring process as well. So I thought that was a beautiful story, especially since, they had a child and their funding was about to run out. Now they feel I can afford having a child. I can start my life. I can take vacation. The value is there from my work. And so it was not like they had to invent work. It was leveraging what they already have. Put on your resume things that you think may not be important. Others may view as, wow, 10 archaic languages is better than like zero archaic languages, and I can barely speak two. So that was an amazing story.
Thank you so much. Time flies and we're only 3 minutes away. So I would like to close this panel today asking with a single, very concise and precise piece of advice that you would want to leave our undergraduate students applying to graduate school or incoming graduate school, or even those that are thinking about applying to graduate school. So I would like to start with you, Zane.
Thing I always tell students when they're looking at working at a graduate program is find the professors that you want to work with and reach out to them. Contact them before you ever arrive and start a dialogue. Get to know the people you want to work with so that they can get to know you. And that's because, one, you're more than just a name on a page, and two, because you start to see, can I see myself working and studying under this person? Can I see myself being mentored? And is this a good fit? And that's critical from my perspective.
Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, I think I'll riff off of that one. And when you are considering what programs to apply to and what mentors to choose, consider your professional development and whether or not that program in person will support your professional development. It's an unfortunate reality that there are advisors who do not like it when their students go to professional development activities or do not want their students to do internships. So if that's going to be important to you, pick a mentor that will also support that, and pick a program in a school that has graduate career services. Not all schools do. We do at Hopkins, but unfortunately, it's not the norm. So make sure you consider this when you're applying to different programs.
Yeah, very good advice, and I actually took that into consideration choosing graduate school myself. So Roshni, you have the honor to finish our panel today with final pieces of advice.
Thank you. Going with the theme of what Zane and Kate said, I'll come at it from a perspective of an international student, if there's anyone in the audience, or with someone who's navigating professional school or grad school with multiple identities, to look at the data of your grad school. There'll be hopefully data available, and see, are there people who look like you? If you're underrepresented minority, where do they go? What departments are they sort of coming out of? What kind of roles do they have? I'd say like research the data, and if you have to bring that up during your grad school interviews, is there any support for international students? How much is the support? Where, is there a dedicated office? If you have to go to that extent of asking those questions during interviews, because in interviews, again, even if it's grad school, is a chance to see if you would like to go there as well, not just sort of sit in the hot seat and be interviewed. Ask those questions, those tough questions, and it's okay to ask those questions, especially since, again, your entire grad school experience will will be reflected in the ones that you're surrounded by, in the kind of support that you receive. So don't be afraid to do your background research and focus on the data as well.
Thank you so much. It has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for the panelists for their time and their advices. And thank you to all in the audience for taking the time to attend this inaugural bootcamp for people applying or thinking about applying to graduate school. So with this, we end the first day of the bootcamp, and we hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. on the second day. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you.